Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the RDH Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chad, joined alongside me by the one and only Tanner. How's it going, dude?
You know what? Football is back. I'm doing very good. Let's get right into it. I mean, these games this weekend had me on the edge of my seat. It doesn't matter if it was Saturday or if it was Sunday. It was fun all day long. It doesn't matter who
Or
was playing.
Thursday or Monday.
Or Thursday or Monday, dude. We'll get to Monday's game when we get there. But let's dive into it. What do you want to start with?
We're gonna hit some college football recap, and then we're gonna recap some week one NFL action, and then we got some matchups to talk about for week two. But like you said, let's get into it. Start right off with just going into the biggest game in college football, and the biggest question in college football right now is Texas officially back. Texas takes down Alabama. First time Alabama has lost at home, and I think 21 appearances, straight appearances. And Texas not only won that game, but they looked like the better team the entire time. They had the better quarterback, looked like they had the better defense. Every facet of that game, Texas won. And Alabama has lost in a while, and a lot of those defensive players and most of those offensive linemen are going to go to the NFL. So go ahead and give me what you thought about that game because I got that one wrong.
We talked about it last week, and I said I don't know exactly what I said, but I know deep down I knew there was a chance. I had a feeling going into that game, and it's just Texas looked really good in their season opener, and they just continued that momentum, and they're on fire. They did everything they needed to do against Bama, and they didn't make any of those like unnecessary turnovers. They made the big plays when they needed them, and Bama looked okay. Like they don't get me wrong, they looked good. They looked like a top 10 team, but like not all throughout the game. You know what I mean?
They didn't. They didn't. They had flashes. You know what I mean? I remember in the third quarter when they hit a deep pass. I think it was 60 plus yard bomb. Touchdown. I was like, oh, here we go. But then it wasn't even close. There was only one point in that game where it was close to me. It seemed like, and then Texas kind of pulled away from them and
Yeah.
really showed the nation who's the better team. And right now, the only other team on their schedule to me, is Oklahoma and Kansas State that even give them a chance to lose. So right now, it's Texas. Texas has essentially not sealed their destiny yet. They have a lot. They have a lot of games to go. They can't overlook any of these opponents. But I mean, Oklahoma and Kansas State's the hardest left on their schedule. That's not bad. You know what I mean? That's a chance to go undefeated.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, talk about a welcome to the SEC for Texas. I mean, God, they just go up against Bama and take them out. They're like, all right, yeah, I think we're ready. God.
And 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 interjecting real quick, not to mention Georgia,
Yeah.
very recently too. So they are coming into the SEC, and I don't remember which player it was, but I saw a video of him running to the recruits, telling them to come to Texas, and I was like, that's hilarious. Like that is really funny because he's not wrong.
No.
Texas maybe swung some recruits that game, and if they didn't, I'd be very surprised. But is that all you got on Texas and Alabama?
I just think Texas was the far better team. I just all around, I think they deserved to win the game, and at the end, they won by, they pulled away, and I don't know if they won by multiple scores, but it kind of felt like it.
Yeah, definitely. And then, you know, we had Texas A&M jumping to the other Texas team, Tanner and I's alma mater, against Miami, and A&M goes out there and loses to an to an unranked Miami team.
Oh
That
God.
was, yeah, that was not a way to start off the
That was
college
bad.
football weekend,
That was
and
bad.
it was just not a good game. And to me, the biggest thing that stood out is the team just kind of looked like they gave up. Honestly, like I saw multiple touchdowns, uh, by Miami, passing touchdowns that our defensive backs just kind of look like they stopped running. And it's like, look, it's a one score game most of the game, and then they started to pull away at the end, with Miami, and they didn't necessarily have the best game. It's just Texas A&M just really couldn't move the ball when they needed to, and when their big players needed to show up, either something happened or an unforced error happened. And to me, that's coaching. That's
Mm-hmm.
coaching when you have all those unforced errors and you have teammates that are arguably not trying. Like I'm it's really hot in Texas. It's probably like it's the fourth quarter. Everyone's like, dude, it's like 108 outside, but but still to me, it just looked like they gave up at points, and as a fan, that was not fun to see, and they just looked defeated. And it begs the question, is Jimbo officially on the hot seat?
I mean, I think he's been on the hot seat for a little bit now, at least for me. Um, but that game was just in every single part of the game was terrible, just terrible. You know, I mean, you had defensive backs that were just not playing up to their strengths. You know, they just weren't tackling. They weren't wrapping guys up and putting them on the ground. They were just kind of going through the motions. It almost seemed like at some points, and they weren't doing the things that I think they easily could have. Now, that's not to say that Miami wasn't a good team. You know, that's not to say that they didn't perform very well. They did. Their quarterback was awesome. I mean, he fit some balls
Absolutely.
in a lot of great places, and he looked like a really good quarterback that night. And he deserved to win that game, and they absolutely did. You know, but I do think a lot of it did come from A&M's mistakes and just kind of just dumb mistakes. You know, I think the defense is probably the biggest part to blame for this. I don't think the offense was like terrible, but I don't think they were good. The play calling was a little rough in some points. You know, there was a couple of touchdowns and those were nice. They had spurts. You know, it's kind of like we talked about earlier, but like they had spurts and they just couldn't keep it on the field at all game. But Miami, God, they were lights out. You know, they were just cooking them. I mean, it's just that simple. I mean, you saw a very very. I'm pretty sure he's a pretty big prospect coming into this year, Damani Richardson for A&M. He looked like he was lost out there, and that's an elder guy in that locker room. You know, that's a leader, and at some points he just wasn't. He didn't look like he was on the field. You know, there were some points he made some plays. Don't get me wrong, but there were some points where it didn't look good. It wasn't good.
Exactly. And you said everything, and Miami hit on every single cylinder.
All of it.
Every play kind of seemed to go their way. Just like we'll talk in an NFL game here in a little bit, but I mean everything went Miami's way, and A&M, like I said, just didn't really, the offense. I agree. I don't think the offense is necessarily to blame, but there was times when the offense I think could have gotten a first down,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a questionable play call here or there, or run, you know what I mean, when it's an obvious not a running situation, kind
Mm-hmm.
of what I saw.
Yeah.
But hey, catching by surprise is college football. I've seen crazier things happen. Jump into the next headline is Colorado is still undefeated. Travis Hunter and Sanders had another great week. So, Sanders I think is still technically number one on the Heisman watch if you wanna get there that early, but Travis Hunter's got to be on there too. He's playing really well, and Colorado's in the top 25, and Colorado's here to stay for another week. So as long as Colorado keeps winning, to me, it's a good week in college football right now.
I watched some of that game. I mean, it was pretty impressive. You know, they didn't come out to a blazing hot start. You know, it took them a little bit to get going, but once they got going, it was like here they are. They're back again. You know, they're slinging it. They just kind of look unstoppable right now. And hey, maybe that's the Dion magic. Maybe we just need that in college football. I don't know. I don't know.
Exactly. But Colorado, let's keep it rolling. You know what I mean? I want to see this Colorado team keep getting some dubs. Last college football point we're gonna hit on is it's another week, and it's another week we have to talk about Caleb Williams, USC. Caleb Williams on a roll, does it again. That's probably the guy that's sitting right there at Heisman number one or number two right now as well, even though he won last year. But that offense is fun to watch, man. It's almost like an air raid offense to me is kind of what it looks like. And it's just give Caleb Williams the ball and let him do what he does. And he hit so many throws this past weekend where that was an NFL throw. You know what I mean? That's what I was saying. I was sitting there saying that's an NFL throw. That's an NFL throw. To me, this kid is an absolute slam dunk prospect so far. I don't see his play dropping off. And hopefully no injuries come anytime soon. But this kid is something special and probably going to be the number one overall pick in next year's draft. And he just keeps performing week after week. And I get it. Not against the most highly ranked of teams so far, but hey, it's fun, man. And college football is officially back. We're rolling, and we're gonna go see some USC games this year. That's for sure.
Oh yeah. I mean, the thing about college football is you don't get to pick your schedule. You got to play who the NCAA gives you. So, Caleb Williams, he goes out there and he destroys this team, and that's fine. He looks really good doing it. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with it.
Exactly. Now jump into we got some NFL talk.
All right,
and we're gonna
let's get into
recap.
it.
We're gonna recap. We're gonna hit some big points from this previous week, and then Tanner's gonna let you know how we did in our matchups last week. If you listen to the podcast, was not a good start, folks. We'll start there. Wasn't a good start. Anyway, week one recap. Three offensive plays, and Mr. Aaron Rodgers is officially out for the season with a torn Achilles. That was probably the weirdest injury I think I guess I've seen in the NFL. You know, it didn't look that bad. Then when you went to the slow motion, it's like, oh, that was completely right on his ankle. And I immediately said ankle injury. And then he tried to get up. You see him try to move, and then he just immediately sits back down. Then he starts limping, and as he's going to the locker room, it gets worse. And the worst, for Jets fans that you can have, Aaron Rodgers done for the season. Tanner, what does this do to the Jets?
I don't know. It's hard to say because I don't know what they're going to go do. I don't know what they're going to go do in the quarterback position specifically. I think their team is loaded. A lot of times, they'll go and get somebody who's a veteran in this league who can play like that, who can just manage the game. But we watched last night. Zach Wilson didn't look that bad. Despite what he's been through in the past in his NFL career. But he didn't look that bad. He looked like he could manage the game. He's been watching Aaron Rodgers in the offseason, and that's probably who they're going to go with, moving forward. But I don't think the situation for the Jets changes. I think they still have high expectations, but not as high. I don't think they're looking for Super Bowl. I don't think they're looking to win it all. Maybe they still are. Maybe Zach Wilson is like the great Messiah coming from heaven, but he's going to lead them somewhere, and hopefully that's the playoffs. I think they can make a playoff spot if they continue playing like they did last night. Their defense was lights out, and Zach Wilson did enough to win the game, especially in that second half. So I think with good coaching, this team can go far.
I mean, it's not bad, but for me, if Aaron Rodgers isn't there, that offense just really wasn't moving.
No.
When you it was one of the most boring games to watch up until the very end. Literally, like up until the very, very end of that game, to me, it wasn't the best football game to watch because the Bills just looked so flat and the Jets really couldn't get anything moving, and the Bills just kept turning the ball. Well, sorry, Josh Allen just kept turning the ball over and over and over. And I love defensive matchups, but I mean that was 4 turnovers by the Bills, and if you take away those 4 turnovers, that game's nowhere near close. So to me, I'm sorry, but I don't think the Jets are a playoff team if Zach Wilson's at quarterback. There are definitely some veterans out there. The obvious ones, Tom Brady. There's Matt Ryan, but Matt Ryan didn't do the best. Toward the end of that season last year. I saw ESPN Colin Kaepernick has already reached out to the organization. I think is what I saw or what I read at least. His team has. So there's a lot of options out there. The Jets won a very tough and ugly football game, but hey, that's a big win, and especially over an opponent like the Bills. When you have week one of a lot of teams losing that we'll talk about, it was one week that we did not see coming. But last thing we'll say about the Jets is that Aaron Rodgers is he back next year after next? Is he actually back? Is that it? You know what I mean? Is the guaranteed money there, and he's off but I don't know. You know what I mean? That's a very hard injury to come back from, a torn Achilles, especially that early on in the season. I can't even imagine. I've hurt myself a lot, but I've never torn an Achilles. We'll see, right? We'll see what happens with this Jets team.
It's just hard for me because I think the team is so loaded in every other aspect. And if Zach Wilson can just calm down, if he can just not, if he can just not do what Josh Allen did last night, I think that team is going to be okay. I don't know if they're going to make a Super Bowl run. Probably not. But, I think there's at least a little hope.
And I think they need to lean on the run. They have Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook back there. They need to lean on the run. And then, if I'm then, you're following the game plan, but you're running on first and second down. You're the Cowboys when Ezekiel Elliott was there early on in the career. You're running first and second down every time. Everybody in the league knows you're doing it, but you're still getting at least 5-6 yards. So, if you're getting those 5-6 yards when you're running, that makes it a third and manageable, right? So it's a 3rd and 4, it's a 3rd and 3. That's a lot more manageable than a 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, where it's an obvious passing situation, and you know that you're going to bring in pass rushers to rush Zach Wilson and drop more back into coverage because he's not necessarily, the guy that's going to hit a dot. I haven't seen him hit dot. There are times where he was hitting dots, but not a ton. I mean, that Garrett Wilson touchdown that he threw, that was not Zach Wilson. That was Garrett Wilson.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That was completely Garrett Wilson. So to me, I think this Jets team needs to lean on the run, needs to lean on their defense. And if their defense keeps performing, then I think all they need to get is, 14 to 21 points a game because their defense is that good. And they did it to Buffalo, who's one of the most explosive offenses in the NFL. So number 2, are the Dallas Cowboys back? Tanner and I talked about it last week. I said I wasn't worried about the Giants, hadn't lost to him in a while. And even as a Cowboys fan, don't think I saw that one coming. My goodness. The Cowboys defense, arguably one of the best defensive performances I've ever seen in my entire life. I can't recall a better one. Maybe Von Miller in the Super Bowl, maybe. But even then, I don't even think I can. They had so many turnovers and just destroyed the Giants 40-0. Tanner, what did you see in that game?
I saw a complete game. I saw a complete game where the defense played to every single level at the highest level. I mean, just the D-line on its own was getting to Daniel Jones in like a second and a half. It wasn't even close. You go back into the linebackers, they were playing outstanding. They were going across the field. Yeah. They were going in and out of the game. They were going sideline to sideline, and they were making these tackles that were just wrap them up, get them down, and do not let this play go any further. You saw points when the Giants, they would get some momentum. They get like a first down or something like that, and they would just be immediately stopped the next play by, a tackle just made immediately at the point when the ball met the receiver's hands, and they would be right on him immediately. And that's not even to mention the secondary. Like, the cornerbacks played outstanding. Trayvon Diggs had he had a game. He played extraordinarily well. And that's not even to mention Stephon Gilmore got his first interception in his first game as a Cowboy. So that's awesome. He played lights out. I can't tell you how many games I saw or how many plays I saw where Daniel Jones would just throw the ball and Stephon Gilmore would, bam, right there, pass breakup. He's on it all day long. And then, the safeties, like they played out of their mind too. They're all over the field. They're rotating in and out, and they're doing what they do. Like they're not letting anything get down the field. They didn't have a busy night, because everything was shit. Daniel Jones was getting rushed in the backfield early, and I'm excited. I don't know what else to say about this team,
Yeah, and to hit on your safety point real quick, Dallas' starting safety, Donovan Wilson, is not playing. He's injured. Mm-hmm. So that was backup safeties that were making those plays, and not to mention the brand new cornerbacks additions like you were talking about with Stephon Gilmore, the most recent trade. This is a team that was being talked about as a top 5 defense in this offseason, and I was a skeptical one. The thing with the Cowboys defense is, yes, they have a pretty solid defense, but they give up a lot of yards. They don't give up a lot of scores, but they give up a lot of yards. And to be a top defense in the NFL, you can't give up 300 or 400 yards a game. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So that was kind of their mentality, was bend, don't break. And then in the red zone, they would hold them to a field goal. And then Dallas has the offensive weapons to go out there and win. That's been the formula for the last 2 years with Dan Quinn, and it's worked, up until the playoffs, right? Or up until, some games in the regular season where it hasn't. But this isn't a top 5 defense. This is a top 1 or 2 defense. If they continue to play like that, if you had fantasy football, you won the game. They had like 40 plus points in defense. That's unbelievable. You know what I mean? That is absolutely unbelievable. And when you have a defense that's hitting that much and your offense really doesn't have to do a whole lot, then, that's the exact formula you want. And that is exactly how you win a football game by 40 points. And, like I said, Dallas's offense really didn't have to do much. But when they did, CeeDee Lamb went out there and performed. Mm-hmm. Same with Tony Pollard. Mm-hmm. Dak looked pretty sharp. Jake Ferguson had some drops, and, some other receivers had some drops as well. But, hey, I think, with the offensive line, Tyron Smith went out in, toward the end of the game. That was a little scary. We had 2 backups in there already. When Tyron Smith went out there, backups played really well. So that's really great to see. And the New York Giants defense and offensive lines are both no joke. Like, their defensive line obviously is one of the best in the league, in my opinion, with who they have. And their offensive line is not bad, in my opinion. They're not bad. They have high draft picks on their offensive line. They haven't necessarily panned out. You know what I mean? But on paper, they're not bad. But Dallas made them look like a high school football team going up against an NFL football team. And it was just unbelievable. Dallas was faster.
Mm-hmm.
Dallas got to the ball every single time, like you were saying with Stephon Gilmore. Every single player looked like they hit harder. Trayvon Diggs got beat on that route and then went behind him and punched the ball out behind him about 15 yards down the field. Like, it just looked like the Giants weren't holding on to the ball. Nothing was going right for them, and everything was going right for the Cowboys. So next time the Giants and the Cowboys play, I don't see it being a 40-0 game. But hey, if the defense looks like that, then good luck. You know what I mean? Good luck. Anything else on the Cowboys, or are we jumping to the next one?
I just want to say that I think Dak Prescott, although he was basically invisible throughout that game because he didn't really need to do anything. I think he played well. I think that's a good place to start for him. Coming off a 15 interception season, you don't want to see him go out there and throw 40 passes a game, right? You don't want to see him to go out there and like sling it. You want to see him go out there and manage the game, and that's what he did, and he did a good job at it. And Tony Pollard got 2 touchdowns on offense because of it.
Exactly. You nailed it. And their playmakers, showed up when they needed to.
Mm-hmm.
Going to another team in the NFC East, the Philadelphia Eagles, against the New England Patriots. They did win, but they did not look invincible, and they almost lost at the end of the game with the Patriots driving the field. The Patriots were driving the field, and they had the first down, but they didn't get the foot and bounce it. It was clear. It wasn't in bounce, but Philly dodged one yesterday, and I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw the Patriots actually driving down the field. But hey, man, that was an almost really great ending to a football game. But what did you have on the Eagles game?
I was really surprised. I thought the Patriots defense played really well, and I thought Jalen Hurts, I think he played okay. I didn't think he played up to the level that he was last season. It's a season opener. We'll see what happens, but like he looked okay. Okay to good level. Their receivers, they looked pretty good. Devonta Smith looked great. AJ Brown, he looked pretty good towards the end of the game. Their offense was stagnant in some places. It didn't look explosive like we saw last year, but I mean, they built up a good enough lead in the very beginning that they kind of coasted on it for a while. And, the Patriots, they came back. But, they scored some points, and it wasn't enough, unfortunately. If you did watch that last play, that was a crazy play because it was like 4th and 11, and like it was a toe drag away from being like a first down, and they're at like the 10 or the 15 or something like that. So it was a really close game, actually, despite what the score says. I don't know. Is Philly weakening? Is there a crack? Is there a crack in their armor? What do you think?
If that's, it's the first game of the season, so I'm going to chalk it up to that. If it continues, then maybe, you know what I mean? Maybe the free agents that they lost were actually, that big of impact, that big impact players, and the rookies maybe, just haven't got up there yet. But Jalen Carter out of Georgia, who replaced Jordan Hargrove there at the defensive tackle position, looked really good. And their safeties didn't play too bad, but their safeties did get beat. So, Chauncey Gardner went over to the Lions. He did not get beat this past weekend, and we'll jump to that game in a second. But, hey, I think the Eagles don't look invincible. I definitely don't think they look as good as they did last year. But once again, it's only week 1, so I'm not going to overreact yet. You know what I mean? I'm not going to go ahead and say that it's a for sure thing that the Philadelphia Eagles are not as good as last year, because you never know. It could be one hiccup and Jalen could just start going, son. So you never know. He could just start going because he's that electric of a player. Now, please take us away with the Browns just stunning the Bengals. What did you see in that matchup?
What I saw, I will lead off with this because I think it was a very important factor in the game, is rain. The weather conditions were terrible in Cleveland or Cincinnati, wherever they're played, in Ohio, period. It wasn't good for Joe Burrow in that specific scenario. He didn't look good. The ball was very wet, and I'm gonna chalk it up to the weather because Joe Burrow doesn't ever do stuff like that. I think they held him like 82 passing yards. He just wasn't on target. The Browns were constantly in the backfield, and he was never really given a chance to even succeed in that game. I think they went down and got a field goal early, and that's about all they did, period, on offense. Now going to the other side of things, Cleveland's defense against that Cincinnati Bengals offense, despite it actually being raining, I think they played very well in, again, like, kind of like we were talking about with the Cowboys, like every facet of the game. They brought in a lot of veterans on the D line, and they showed up. They showed up, they played outstandingly on defense, specifically the defensive line. The corners got involved and they played well. It didn't really matter. The ball wasn't going to get to the receiver that much anyways, so the corners didn't have that big of a day. Don't get me wrong, when the ball was there, they made great plays. And the safeties, they came down and they did work too. Grant Delpit, I watched him, and I think he had a fantastic game. The big play that you probably take away from that game is Myles Garrett. Him beating Orlando Brown and sacking Joe Burrow in the backfield when they go for it on like 4th and whatever on their own like 30. That was the biggest play of the game. And I mean, I don't know. The only other thing about that game is Deshaun Watson on Cleveland's offense. They ran the ball as they should have, and Deshaun didn't look sharp. But again, it was raining, so you don't really know. He did enough. He put up enough points when it mattered. He got a touchdown on the ground, and they looked good for the first time in a while. And I liked it.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great football game on the Cleveland side, and not at all, on the Cincinnati side. That was just another ugly football game from a really good football team, and Joe Burrow did not look great at all. Every ball he threw seemed to get tipped. It looked a little bit slow. Cleveland just looked a little bit faster, and Myles Garrett doing basketball moves, crossing over in the defensive tackle position in the beginning of the game, and then going in and almost getting the sack. Like that's a guy, and that's a defense that is just having their selves a day. You know what I mean? They're having themselves a day, and that team not only played extremely well, they were top 5 best team, show out week 1. And, the offense, you said it, Nick Chubb, really great runner. That's a guy that's a guy that, you lean on and you run the offense through, and that's exactly what they're doing. And Cleveland is showing you why, that's how they win football games, right? And Deshaun Watson didn't need to make the throws, but when he did make the throws, they didn't look that great, like you said. Mm-hmm. So to me, the big takeaway from that game is Cleveland's defense looked really, really good. And Cleveland's offense still is a little bit, stagnant, still needs to move the ball a little bit faster to me. But I'm really thinking Cleveland had a great showing, and a lot of teams that we didn't pick to won this past weekend. And to me, that's awesome, because I thought the AFC was a little bit, more of a levels game. And right now everybody's getting closer and closer. Now, once again, week 1, I'm always going to chalk it up to it being week 1. Mm-hmm. If it, happens week 2, week 3, week 4, statistically that's even harder to make the playoffs. So I don't think any of these teams are going to go down 0-4 that lost this past weekend in the AFC, but hey, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I think the big thing about Cleveland is, and if you've been watching Cleveland for a while, you know that their defensive line, they have had no help other than Myles Garrett, for a long time. And that finally changed on Sunday. I think their new additions, they got, I think, Dalvin Tomlinson, Za'Darius Smith, those guys. Dalvin Tomlinson is a massive human being, and I'm amazed. Oh, yeah. I saw him walk in the stadium, and I was like, oh, my gosh. He's huge. But he had an impact. Za'Darius Smith had an impact. And it's finally nice to see that Myles Garrett doesn't have to do everything on that defensive line, So I liked it a lot. If Cleveland's defense plays even half of up to the capability that they played that night, they're going to be just fine.
Exactly. And last stunner we're going to talk about of week 1 is the Lions go out there and stun the Chiefs. Travis Kelce, a game time decision, was not able to go. Great. Couldn't feel movement in his leg. That's the Thursday game that kicked off the NFL season, and great game. But Travis Kelce not being there on the Chiefs offense was very obvious. I don't think I've ever seen a team other than the New York Giants, like literally last year, the year before, and the year before last, actually, drop as many passes. The Chiefs realistically won that game. Like they really did. They went down there and won it twice. Patrick Mahomes got that first down on that drive twice, and his receivers dropped it both times. Kadarius Toney dropped one, and I don't remember the other receiver that dropped it. But man, when you complete 2 out of the 3 passes on that last drive, Both of them being for first downs, both of them not, being a cornerback made a great play, just a literal dropped pass. That's a tough pill to swallow. And the Detroit Lions get out of there with a huge win week one. And now you've got a very pissed off Patrick Mahomes. Good luck, the rest of the season. And he's been getting extra work in with those guys because he backed them up immediately right after the game in the press conference saying it wasn't their fault. And once again, it's week one. Everybody's still getting up to game speed. So we'll see. I'm not hitting the panic button on the Chiefs yet at all. And the Detroit Lions, impressive. That's what I have to say. Impressive football teams. I think real quick, I'll hit on them. Gibbs, the rookie running back from Alabama, who Tanner and I have been talking a lot about, showed you flashes of what he's going to do. They predominantly ran it with David Montgomery, which is a smart move, running it with the veteran in the beginning of the season. But they're going to give the rock to Gibbs fairly soon. I think they're going to give the reins to him. And Amon-Ra St. Brown looked incredible. Looked really, really good against that Kansas City defense, and the offensive line held up. But Chris Jones wasn't there. It was a holdout. And now Chris Jones has been signed again, so you're going to have Chris Jones the next time they play each other. Kansas City, the injuries and the players that weren't signed, that's what bit them, right? I don't think that Detroit would have won that game if Kelsey and Chris Jones would have been there, in my opinion.
Maybe. I think a couple things. I mean, I think the Detroit Lions showed up to play 100%.
They did.
When they needed to make a drive, when they needed to get points, they did. And they looked good doing it on those drives. They went. I can remember multiple times late in the game when it's like, okay, you need a touchdown here. It's Patrick Mahomes time again. And they went down, long drive, scored, and they got 7 on it. They didn't get 3, they got 7. They went down and got a touchdown, and that's the biggest thing. They got it when they needed it. Secondly, to hit on your Jahmyr Gibbs point, you didn't see a lot of him last night. Because for whatever reason, you don't really know what it is, but whenever he did get the ball, I thought he was very explosive. I thought he looked really good when he ran. They're just not, giving him the entire, house quite yet. I liked what they did. They're kind of, slowly getting him into that number one running back role. David Montgomery being that, role model for him. Very different running styles, very different players, but I think both of them bring a lot to the offense. I agree with you. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is slowly, I think he's going to make his way up into that number one role. I think you're going to see it throughout the season. Just when he has the ball, it's just kind of like a different atmosphere. It looks like he is back in college. When he got that ball, he would make these cuts, he'd make these moves, and he'd get downfield and he'd get yards. And that's huge in the NFL. And coaching staff, they saw it. I know they did. Everyone saw it. Like he's primed and ready. So just wait for him. And on the side of the Chiefs, I agree. I didn't think they even played that badly. They didn't look terrible. Obviously, the receiving and the catching and stuff like that wasn't great. That's obvious. But like you said, it's week one. You can chalk it up to that. If Kelsey was there, they probably would have put up more points. I agree with you. If Chris Jones was there, the Lions probably wouldn't have had as clean of a pocket as you would have seen. But I think in a weird kind of twisted way, it's a good thing for the Chiefs, to lose this early. It's just, you see it happen a lot to teams in like the middle of the season. It's kind of like a check me game, kind of like a realization game. The Chiefs had it very, very early, I guess. So I think they're going to do everything that they need to do to get back up to top form. So I kind of, obviously it sucks the Chiefs lost in their mind, but I think they're going to be better because of it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And like I said, you gotta piss off Patrick Mahomes. So have fun. Have fun is all I have to say. But jumping to next week. Jump into the big tops next week. Thursday night football. We got Vikings and Eagles. That is a massive NFC game. And briefly, we'll tell you too. Last week, if you listened last week, we picked some games. We're going to continue to pick games all season. We didn't do well. We Tanner and I both went 1-4 in our games. So I really hope you didn't put any bets last week. But I think everybody, I think everybody went 1-4 last week in terms of picks. I don't think any of my friends hit any other bets or any of their parlays because of the games and how crazy week one was. But 1-4, we're moving along, and we're gonna get positive this week. So Vikings and Eagles, jump right into it. That's Thursday night game this week. Huge NFC game, huge game for the Vikings too because they're already 0-1. The Eagles are, they won, so not as big of a game for the Eagles, but still the Vikings are a very good football team. They don't have Dalvin Cook. They have Alexander Madison there now, kind of running back by committee in the backfield. Made some key additions in the offseason, but the Vikings are that team that's like, are you going to make the next step, or are we going to kind of, sign Justin Jefferson, try to find another quarterback, and then make another couple key signings and try to get another kick at the can? You know what I mean? Like, you can't really get rid of Kirk Cousins. You're definitely not going to get rid of Justin Jefferson because Kirk Cousins have given them the best chance to win. But similar story with the Cowboys, great record in the regular season these past couple years. And then when they get to the playoffs, they kind of fizzle off. Same, random games in the season. Really, really similar to the Cowboys in recent years. But this week, I'm sorry. I think the Eagles are going to hit on all cylinders. I think the Vikings are going to go down 0-2, and I think the Eagles are going to start out 2-0. Who do you got in this game?
I'm tending to agree with you on this one. If you watched last week, the Vikings, they didn't look amazing. They lost to Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Baker Mayfield Buccaneers. He's leading them. He's the field general over there. It makes me a little bit happy, just a little bit, but no, it just wasn't that exciting. The Vikings, they just weren't all there. It kind of looked like they just didn't show up. Justin Jefferson looked good. T.J. Hawkinson, he had flashes. Alexander Madison wasn't bad. Defense, that's enough said about that. And I just don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know what to think about this team right now. Is Dalvin Cook that big of a part of their team that they just let go? You know what I mean? Is that the issue? Like, what is the difference here? I'm just not seeing it, especially against a team like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that you didn't think was gonna do something like that. So I don't know. I'm gonna pick the Eagles. I just think they have every like advantage in this matchup, just overall on the board, and they're just good. The Vikings don't look good, and the Eagles, coming off an okay win, but like I think it's Thursday night football. Kirk Cousins on prime time. Give me the Eagles, 100%.
Yeah, got to see Kirk Cousins a lot back when he played for Washington, but yeah, definitely going with the Eagles against the Vikings there. And you said it, it's already going to be hard to run the ball in the Philadelphia Eagles defense. Now they don't have Dalvin Cook to do it, so we'll really see how it is. They're going to lean on that passing game. Darius Slay is going to follow Justin Jefferson around the field. In my opinion, Justin Jefferson's the best receiver in the league, though, so I would put him up against anybody. But still, we will see what happens with that game. And when you have a player like Justin Jefferson that is that explosive, all you're trying to do is hold the guy to 100 yards. 100 yards or under, and you're stoked for that week because you've seen what he did in just the first half of last week's game. So, if the Eagles can stop Justin Jefferson, I think the Eagles win that game. I think that's really the only key. And if they can get to the quarterback, which they didn't do a great deal last week, if they can get to the quarterback, I think they're going to get that figured out. And I think, once again, their run defense is pretty solid. So it's going to be hard to run on them anyway, especially with an arguably downgraded running back. No disrespect to Madison. Jumping on to Sunday morning game, we're going to hit the Bengals again, and we got the Ravens. Tanner, start this one off. Who is taking the Ravens in the Bengals game?
It's hard for me not to go with the Bengals, so I'm gonna go with the Bengals. But I just don't think that last game was a good representation of what Joe Burrow and that offense can do. I mean, he's the highest paid quarterback in the NFL now for a reason. So I think he's gonna get off to a much better start in this game. He knows the Ravens defense. It's another divisional matchup, and it's Joe Burrow, baby. I mean, he can't do that 2 weeks in a row, right? Right?
No way. No way. I think Joe Burrow goes down and takes out the Ravens. The Ravens got to win this past week against the Texans. Lamar really did not look that great, and the Bengals defense is definitely an upgraded defense with the Texans. So I think the Ravens are going to have an even harder time running the ball. I think that the Ravens had a really, really good show out with their rookie playmaker. Had a really, really good show out with their wide receiver. His name is escaping right now, of course. I think of his comparison, Hollywood Brown, but he played really well in his first NFL game, and Lamar had some great throws to him. But Lamar also had some plays where it was a little questionable. He had a fumble where he was running with the ball kind of out here. Fantasy wise, I was like, what are we doing here? Why are we getting fumbles? But it's once again, it's week one. That's the theme of this episode. I think the Ravens are going to look even better next week, but you're not. There's no way you're going to hold the Bengals to three or less points 2 weeks in a row. There's quite literally no shot. Marlon Humphrey, the cornerback out of Alabama, one of my favorite corners, plays for the Ravens. He's going to be stuck on glue with Jamar Chase. Their division, they play each other a lot, so they know each other. They're very familiar with each other. Every division game is going to be hard to play, but I give the nod to Jamar in this one. I love Marlon Humphrey, like I said, one of my favorites, but I think Jamar and Joe Burrow are going to go out there and have a game. And I also think Lamar is going to go out there and have a pretty solid game on the ground, and maybe open up some passing lanes a little bit more because he just wasn't able to get it done at all against Houston, and that's a little scary because Houston's offense did not look good, and the ball was in Lamar's hands a lot that game. So I got the Bengals. Tanner's got the Bengals. We got the same team. Going to the Sunday afternoon game. We're always going to hit a Cowboys game, so it happens to be on Sunday afternoon this time. And they're playing the Jets, who been listed in this episode. Been opening your phone on social media. Aaron Rodgers is out for the season. For me, it's the Cowboys. I have them. Even if Aaron Rodgers were there, I would still take the Cowboys after what I saw week one. But this is a really good Jets defense, and I don't think the Cowboys are going to be sleeping on them because of, they put the whole league on notice when they shut down Josh Allen. Took the ball away from him 4 times. Dak Prescott is, him and Josh Allen are right there in terms of turnover percentage since they've been in the league. So you got to be careful with that. And the Jets are going to be looking at that. And Dak, CD and Sauce Gardner be going at it. I can't wait for that matchup. That's going to be such a good matchup. But I got Dallas. I think if Dallas's defense continues to play like they did, the Jets are in for a rude awakening. Zach Wilson especially is in for a rude awakening. But if the Jets stick to their game plan and run the ball, maybe the Jets take that game because I think that Garrett Wilson can be held under 100 yards. Personally, Trayvon Diggs, I know I'm saying a lot to hold Garrett Wilson to under 100 yards, but you got to, especially if you're going to be top team in the NFL or top defense in the NFL. So who do you got, Dallas versus the Jets?
I'm going to go Dallas. I don't think it's going to be as lopsided as people kind of think it's going to be, though. I think it's going to be a closer game, probably a one-score game towards the end of it, but only for the reason that I just think the Jets, like I said, overall have a really good team, except, obviously at the quarterback position. But I think their defense, the Jets' defense, is going to come to play. I think we're going to see some struggles with the Cowboys' offense finally, and we're going to get a little mad about it. But the Cowboys' defense, I think it's going to come to play, and I think they're going to show Zach Wilson a rude awakening because don't get me wrong, the Bills' defense, they're good, but the Cowboys' defense, they're better. So it's hard when you're Zach Wilson, a young quarterback, going up against whatever that was on Sunday Night Football that we saw, So give me the Cowboys, but I think it's going to be a close game. What do you want to do for score predictions? I think I'm going to go 31-23. Still a one-score game, but it's by 8.
I'm gonna go a lot less. I'm gonna go Dallas is gonna have 24.
Okay.
And I'm gonna give the Jets 13.
13-24.
13. Yeah, I'm gonna give them a touchdown and 2 field goals, and then I'm gonna give Dallas 3 touchdowns and 1 field goal. That's what I'm gonna predict that game.
Do we see another defensive touchdown or special teams touchdown?
The defensive touchdowns, I'm not sure if we'll see another defensive touchdown, special teams touchdown. I don't think so. I think, no disrespect, but I think we just caught the special teams sleeping a little bit on New York. But I think the Jets, with Salah a little bit, I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know. You could see a special teams touchdown, but realistically, I'm not going to call one of those right now. I don't think so. KaVontae Turpin really hasn't, he's had some good returns, but he hasn't had some great returns. I don't really understand why they were running him in between the tackles. Didn't really understand that one, but hey, whatever. Mike McCarthy, get Turpin out there. I understand. Ball in the playmaker's hands, but defense, I don't know about a defensive touchdown, but a defensive turnover, yes,
Oh,
potentially.
100%.
Yeah, potentially two turnovers. Defense is what I'm going to see for this week, especially with Zach Wilson throwing the ball back there and how fast they were getting to the pass rusher last week. But a defensive touchdown, the only defensive touchdown I see, I mean, you never know with this defense, right? You can see a pick six. You could also see, a blindside hit because Mike is so fast and he's just shot out there like a cannon. But I'll definitely go a couple turnovers on the Cowboys side. Jump into the Sunday night game. We are, a lot of people think this game may be a blowout. I don't think so. I think it's Dolphins and I think it's Patriots, and I think the Patriots always, for some reason, show up, especially on those Sunday night games. I know they don't got Tom Brady anymore, but that defense looked pretty solid against Philly, and I think they have a pretty good defense. Miami's offense looked completely unstoppable last week. What a game against the Chargers! What a win! But now they got to play a team that's a little bit tougher. I'm still going to take the Dolphins over the Patriots, but it's going to be a lot harder of a game than it was last week, in my opinion. I think the Dolphins receiver, I don't think Tyreek Hill is going to have over 200 again. You know what I mean? That was insane. I'll give him over 100. I don't think he's going to get over 200 though. And I think the Dolphins are going to try to do a little bit more running game against the Patriots, especially to try to establish that deep ball because Bill Belichick is such a defensive guru. But yeah, I got the Dolphins winning, and I had them losing last week against the Chargers, and they actually won. And very simple. Tyreek Hill and Tua. Tua showed up and looked like a top tier quarterback, and if he continues to do that, then I wish I would have drafted him in fantasy.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I'm gonna go with the Dolphins as well, just because it's the Patriots, and I don't really quite believe in Mac Jones, especially after whatever I just saw with the Miami Dolphins. Don't get me wrong, Mac Jones, he looked pretty good at some points, but I don't know what the Dolphins are gonna do. They could just put up 40 in like 2 seconds. So I agree. I don't think Tyreek is gonna have as much of a big game as he did last week because I don't know if it's just that possible to do it 2 weeks in a row. But I agree. I think it's going to be a close game. The Patriots defense is not as bad as I think people think they are. I think Bill Belichick, he's a defensive-minded coach, and he coaches those guys up very well. They played well, and they looked pretty good throughout that game. So I like it. I think it's going to be close. But the Dolphins will win it, and I think we're going to see Tua not have as explosive of a game. I think he might throw an interception or two, have a turnover. So that's kind of going to keep the Patriots in the game, do something like that. But I like the Dolphins.
Yeah, same. And take us through our Monday night game, our last matchup, because you're the Browns guy on this podcast. We got the Browns versus the Steelers. Take it away. Monday night, who do you got?
It's always a primetime game, Browns and Steelers. I don't know why they always decide to stick it on Monday or Thursday, but we see it a lot. And I don't really know what to think about the Steelers. I don't really know what to think about the Browns because they're kind of like two opposite sides of a coin right now, But I'm going to go with the Browns. I think they looked really good. It's hard not to go with them, especially after the Steelers just quite literally didn't show up to their game against the Niners, But give me the Browns. I think that defense is ready. I think that defense is ready for Kenny Pickett and whatever they're going to throw at him. It's just up to the Browns offense to see if they can score some points when they need to. I think it's kind of the same situation for the Steelers, but I think to a lesser degree. The Steelers offense didn't look that great, and their defense didn't look that great either. So give me the Browns.
Yeah, I'm gonna go the opposite one. I'm gonna go Steelers, just because I want to have a different pick from you this episode, and I also don't think the Steelers are gonna go out and score 3 points. I think they're gonna actually have a pretty decent showing. I do think it's gonna be a low scoring game, but once again, Mike Tomlin has never finished with a negative record, and I just don't see him starting off 0-2. I see him going 1-1. Then potentially dropping 1-2 and just really kind of getting that 500 all season. I don't see this team necessarily being a contender or really, going into a ton of games with, the favorite. I'm not sure who's going to be favored in this one right now. I haven't checked the odds yet, but I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be a defensive game. And right now the Browns defense is looking a little bit better, but I have a feeling that Kenny Pickett is going to have himself, not a day, but he's going to have a better day than what he had last week and at least get, one passing touchdown, And then maybe Najee actually starts to get going again because, last week he really didn't get going against the 49ers. So I really think they're going to establish that with the Steelers. And the Steelers, lost Deontay Johnson. They're arguably number one wide receiver. So that means they're going to really rely on George Pickens. And I actually think that's, not saying it's a good thing that Deontay Johnson got injured. When Deontay Johnson is on the field, the Steelers are a better football team. I think the stats actually prove it too. But now George Pickens goes up and is that clear number one wide receiver. And he showed flashes all of last year. And the only reason he wasn't was because the other guy on the other side of the field that showed flashes there. So with Deontay Johnson. So now that Deontay Johnson's not there, it's his time to shine. And I think that if, George Pickens is not taken in your league, that's a guy that you absolutely have to go get. And I have him on my fantasy team, and I am very not once again, not excited for Deontay Johnson to get injured because that man won me literally 3 fantasy championships, but that's the new number one receiver, and you're gonna have a tall matchup with Denzel Ward, from Cleveland. So I think Cleveland has a really good defense, and I think that if their offense actually gets going, on paper this is a very scary team. But like you said, their offense has to get going. But we'll see what happens. I think the Steelers are going to pull it out. Any other last notes before we end this thing?
I just want to mention one thing, and it's kind of something that makes me a little angry, and that's fine. But I don't understand where the Packers keep getting these quarterbacks from. Are they just making them in a factory? You know what I mean? Jordan Love in his debut, he balls out, destroys the Bears. What happened? You know what I mean? What happened?
I mean, that's a tough one because the first half and second half of that game were just completely different. You know what I mean? Jordan Love in the first half versus Jordan Love in the second half. I don't know what happened at halftime, but the Bills continued to be flat and the Packers elevated their play big time, and largely on the shoulders of Jordan Love with that 3 touchdown performance. He looked like a top 5 quarterback in that second half, just diamond up the Chicago defense. But I mean, the thing is with Chicago is Justin Fields really didn't look that bad. You know what I mean? They just weren't on the field a lot. And when they were on the field, they didn't make the most of their opportunities because, DJ Moore, when DJ Moore doesn't have any receptions and any yards, like your game plan's not working. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And in the first half, you got to get on the legs of Justin Fields a little bit more. I know they ran it a little bit, but I want to see more read options with Justin Fields. I want to see more shotgun passes to potentially get DJ Moore open. Or, if somebody else on the offense can't get open like a Cole Kmet or somebody, then let Justin use his legs and let him actually, let him break him loose. You know what I mean? I don't know if that game was just they weren't breaking Justin Fields loose yet, but to me it looked like there was times in the pocket when he should have ran, and then when he ran, he should have stayed in the pocket. You know what I mean? So it was like opposite sides of the coin there for him. He couldn't catch a break, and his reads really weren't that great throughout the game, but he kept him in it up until that halfway point, and then the Packers pulled away. But what is this Jordan? What is Jordan Love? What is he going to do week over week? I don't think he's going to replicate that performance next week. But here's the thing. If he gets 2 touchdowns next week, he still may win because that Packers defense looked pretty solid, which I didn't think was also going to be that great of a defense this year. So, if you're a Packers fan, you're stoked because, arguably you're almost as stoked as the Cowboys after that performance because that was a divisional opponent, mm-hmm. and that once again you made them look like a high school football team. So, you're going to play them again after this, in this year. I don't think the matchup's going to be the same when you play him again, but still, that was a dominant performance, and Jordan Love looked like a dominant quarterback. Where are they getting these guys? I don't know what's in the water of Green Bay, but whenever they get there, for some reason, they're fine. You know what I mean? Aaron Rodgers leaves, and his Achilles gets torn. You know what I mean? Like something's going on in Green Bay with these quarterbacks. And here's the last note I'll hit on Jordan Love. This is why I love football so much, and this is why I love draft. I love the draft so much because I was so into Jordan Love coming into the draft, and they kept him on the team every year. You know what I mean? They kept him on the team. He was a backup for 3 years? I think this is his fourth or fifth year now that he's actually on the team, like a Jimmy Garoppolo, but a little bit longer. You know what I mean? With Tom Brady, they actually kept him that whole time. There's a reason for that. And I think you saw it in the second half. But my biggest question mark from that game, this sounds crazy. I think the Bears are going to be okay. I really do. I think that was just an off game. It's a young team. I don't know if they're a little bit excited. You know what I mean? Maybe they're going to run over Green Bay. Maybe the 12-5 prediction record wise, with the analysts, maybe that wasn't a good look. You know what I mean right now. But hey, I do think Justin Fields is still still a candidate for like breakout player of the year in terms of the rest of the season because of how explosive that offense can be and how much better that offense got. And the defense didn't look great. So the offense, you're really going to have to lean on the offense this year. And Justin Fields, it's time to show up because the other guy that got taken right in front of you, Trevor Lawrence, did this past weekend. So we'll see what happens with Chicago, but I think they'll be all right. Packers. Man, if they're another playoff team, if they're in the playoffs again and Jordan Love's doing this again, I don't know what's going to happen. Like, I feel better matching up. Yeah, I might cry too. If the Cowboys match up against them, I may cry because, they always beat the Cowboys in the playoffs in the most recent years, but we'll see what happens. A lot of question marks after week 1, but we'll answer a lot of those after week 2. Thanks everyone for the listen, and we'll catch y'all next week.
Bye.